Hello and welcome back to my Y Stars Apothecary YouTube channel. I am delighted to have Connie of Trine and Kite back on the channel, and we are going to be talking about the spring equinox and Aries season. So Connie is a hybrid astrologer. She blends evolutionary astrology, which is my background, but she blends it with traditional astrology. So she does a really interesting combination of looking at with the traditional astrology kind of what you're facing, and then using the evolutionary astrology to see how you can respond to that in really kind of evolved ways. So Connie is open for bookings right now, and you can book with her online, and I will be putting her website information in the comments and in the area below this video. So we have Mercury direct today. We have the spring equinox, and the part of the reason Connie and I decided to do this video is because Connie lives in Australia and I live in New Mexico in the United States. And we were having this conversation about the difference of Aries season in the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. And it's something that's always intrigued me, the difference between the two. So we wanted to share part of our discussion with you and also get into some of the herbs and plants that you can use during the season to support your transition. And we're going to highlight or spotlight a very interesting new moon that happens right at the end of Aries season that showcases a stellium in Aries, and just talk a little bit about what's going on with that. So we collaborated. Connie did the heart of it, and I added some things on a really nice slideshow that I'm going to pop up. So we've got the spring equinox and Aries season, and the fresh start. Today marks the beginning of the astrological new year, and that's why it's also known as the International Day of Astrology. And whether you're in the Northern Hemisphere or the Southern Hemisphere, Aries is going to bring in fire, courage, and momentum. So, Connie, can you kind of give us an overview, according to traditional astrology, medical astrology, what this season shares with us about temperaments and energetics?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Fern. I'm really honored to be invited again back to work with you. And yes, my name is Connie. I'm from trineandkite.com. So as Fern mentioned, I use traditional techniques as well. And today I just want to share one part of traditional astrology, like a technique that I use sometimes in my clients' work in terms of, we call it the temperament. So temperament is pretty much it's like the dynamic balance of hot, cold, moist, and dry qualities within us and our environment that shapes how we physically, emotionally, and energetically respond to life. So we are coming into Aries season, and Aries in temperament is choleric. So it's all the fire sign. It's hot and dry. So the temperament, the energy itself is like bold, decisive, and instinctive. So it's definitely like taking action. I've got Moon and Mars in Aries, so I know it really well, as I
Yeah.
probably mentioned before. But having said that, with the Aries energy, today what we're going to talk about is how do you use the Aries energy? Because me and Fern, as she mentioned, we're totally at polar opposites side of the earth. So she's on Northern Hemisphere, which is spring for you guys. And for myself in Sydney, Australia, we are the Southern Hemisphere, so it's autumn. So same Aries kind of archetype, but we use it probably in a little bit different way. So spring is actually, we call it sanguine in temperament. That's more like the air energy, so air element, sanguine, and it's actually it's hot and moist. So the energy that we play out during the spring season for Northern Hemisphere folks is enthusiasm and growth, because hot and moist, that's the kind of temperature that plants start to grow as well. Whereas for the Southern Hemisphere, we've got autumn. So we're entering autumn now. So in temperament, we call it melancholic, and that's an earth element. So that is more inward, like we focus. That's the time to pruning and intention. So it's a little bit different, but still with that kind of, so you can think of Aries as the spark, like that's the spark, but the season basically determines how it burns. So that's pretty much what we want to talk about today. Mm.
Great. I love that because, and I just want to pause the slideshow for a moment and talk a little bit about that because I think a lot of times astrologers, when they discuss the North and South and the different hemispheres and how the seasons shift, they kind of avoid, some of the differences. And I love how you frame this as, the qualities of Aries, the archetype of Aries is the same, but the expression of it according to the season changes, what part of Aries you're going to see. So Aries is the cardinal sign, and the cardinal signs lead the seasons. They're leaders in the element that they're in. So cardinal fire has a really dynamic, powerful, just bold presence. And in the northern hemisphere, again, like you said, it brings on the springtime. We see you were talking about that kind of moist, fertile feeling of that airy spring. And so we see, plants and flowers starting to bloom. But then in your southern hemisphere, it's more of an internal blooming. It's an
Absolutely.
inward
Mm.
active journey. So that really helps me personally kind of understand the differences of how Aries manifest in different areas, different parts of the world. Though the sanguine temperament, the northern hemisphere, warm and moist, everything's starting to bloom. There's, we have a lot of bulbs that start to come up at this time. Those are the first thing that usually emerge in the springtime. And there is that, as you said, that kind of rising energy coming out of our shell after the coldness of winter. And so with the southern hemisphere, what are you sensing or feeling from this part of the season as you enter it?
Yeah, the first thing that I notice is the sky, the morning starts darker. Like we used to have the sun rise up quite early in the morning, but like right now the sun just rise. So it's very different. It's like, yeah, the moment I step out of my home, it's really cooling, but at the same time it's grounding. Yeah, it's definitely grounding, and you feel, because for autumn melancholic temperament, it's the full moon. So one thing I want to bring about is also that for you guys, Northern Hemisphere spring, that is like the first, like a new moon kind of temperament. Whereas for us it's 180 degrees. So that's like the full moon, that's harvesting. So yeah, it's very interesting. And one thing I want to actually also add in is not forgetting countries, people who live in countries that is near the equator. Like for example, countries like Singapore, that is where I was born. Um, so countries that is in between, like near the equator, I would think that they would probably use, I would advise that they think more from the Aries archetype. I think that's pretty much most neutral, because they don't experience that kind of drastic seasonal change. They don't have like the four seasons. I was used to it when I was living in Singapore, so it's hot all the time. So I think the Aries, yeah, just focus on using the Aries energy archetype. I think that would be the way to go for countries like that. And I think I've got some tips, like for example, in the Northern Hemisphere, when it comes to spring, like what you said, the rising energy. It's probably more like practical tips, like move your body more, because you've got all channeling the rising energy. That's one practical way, by moving. At the same time, it's like if you want to start projects, because this is just at the beginning, like the sun just enters Aries, 0 degrees Aries. So it's still really, really just a small dot. So you could start, if you want to start something new, maybe start small, but avoid overcommitting yourself, because bear in mind that Mercury just is still in the shadow period. And I think we're still at the final stretch. Even for, is it Mercury and Mars that's still in Pisces? So like, just start small and get outside, get more sunlight, get some fresh air and regulate your mood. That's pretty much my advice to Northern Hemisphere folks. And then for Southern Hemisphere, it's more like simplifying, like, um, have the courage, the Aries archetype, but reduce the commitment, but kind of create more structure, because saying melancholic is earth element. So it's more of a grounding, start something new, but grounding routines, and protect your energy as well. Just not go, 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 but clear your boundaries. That's pretty much my advice when it comes to the Southern Hemisphere people.
Great. Thank you for that. That was really good, wise advice for kind of making the most of this transition of the seasons. And, that is something that as astrologers and, healers and, herbalists, that it's really important to be mindful of the transition points of the season, because there is, it's both a powerful time, but it's also a bit of a vulnerable time, because we're a little off balance. We're moving from one quality of energy to another. And as you mentioned, we still have some planets in Pisces, so we are still feeling that kind of watery influence where there's still some letting go, some releasing, some resolving of old material. So we were
Yeah.
going to talk about this important time that we have coming up. And this is in a few weeks, a little bit later in the season. It actually kind of ends the season. But when we were talking about the really significant transit of this time, this was one that really stood out to both of us. And I've got up here, I have the New Mexico chart, but I also have the Australian chart for this same
Wow.
time period. Yeah, and it's interesting because it's the same day, but the new moon in Santa Fe, New Mexico is at 5:53 a.m. And then when I move forward to the Australian chart, it's at 9:50 p.m.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was
Yeah,
interesting.
that's interesting.
But the planets, the rising sign for the actual chart is the same, but the planets, uh, I mean, they are different. The rising sign is different, but the planets are in the same position. So I thought we could just kind of go into this chart more. This is the Aries new moon on April 17th. We're looking at a really powerful stellium with Mars, Saturn, Mercury, and Neptune. And then, although the sun and moon are in Aries and they're not part of the stellium, they are, of course, conjunct because they are part of this new moon. And they're closely conjunct Chiron. And then we've got the sextile to Pluto, exact sextile to between Mars and Pluto, the traditional modern rulers of Aries, we've got both of these involved in this. So this is super interesting. So what are your thoughts about this chart and this day?
Oh, fun. I feel like it's so dynamic. Like dynamic is the word I use. At the moment I look at Pluto in the mix when it comes to the aspect itself. Like you can also see Jupiter, that is, well, not close to the degree, but by sign, it's squaring all this whole Aries stellium. So there is this tension there. I feel like it's emotional amplification. I feel, because definitely going to be tension. So everybody might feel like people might feel like, there is all this pent-up energy and Jupiter is expanding it, but you don't know where to go. Like you've got lots of ideas to start, but you just don't know how to deal with it. But at the same time, the Aries stellium, it's sextile Pluto, as you mentioned, in Aquarius. So there is some form of help and support there as well, because air and fire energy. So Pluto is helping, pretty much using its um power to help this stellium going. And as we know, Pluto crushed down everything and rebuilt everything. So there is this fire and air kind of interaction that is just going to be interesting. It's definitely going to be interesting. And also, not forgetting that Uranus is in the last anaretic degree, 29 degrees of Taurus. So that is another thing that I think we have experienced that for the past 14 years. Like, oh, Fern, you probably got lots to share about Uranus in Taurus in the final degree. Like, looking at now what's happening in the whole world and all that, resources is definitely in the talk. And we're just doing the final um change. Like Uranus wants change. And I was just thinking that Uranus had enough of Taurus. Like Uranus just wants to go, but at the same time, it's just put down by this big rock that talks about resources and things like that. So I think once Uranus goes into Gemini, things are going to be so different. And this current Aries stellium is going to help when you do the groundwork at the moment, like start something small, as I mentioned. That's my thought. Yeah.
Yeah, no, great. That I like how you brought in the Uranus part of this picture because I think that, there's a lot there. And just circling back around that, this is a new moon. So a new moon is a time where there's an opportunity to plant new beginnings, plant seeds, kind of take a fresh start in whatever area of life the new moon might show up for you, whatever house that the new moon's going to take place in. And so that's amplified by it being in Aries, which is that fresh start, beginning, action, leadership kind of, fire, cardinal fire. So that we've got this amplification of similar themes, but then Mars conjunct Saturn, there's a sense of holding back, or that the new start has to be a bit more patient and intentional and strategic. And as you said, I think Pluto really supports this. There's a couple of sextiles. There's the Mercury, Neptune, Mars, and Saturn sextiling Pluto, and then an out of sign sextile between Uranus and also Neptune, Mercury, and a little bit further along, it's a wider orb, Mars. And so I wanted to just speak to sextiles a little bit because they do really show up in this chart, and I have some thoughts about them, but I want to see if you have some thoughts about sextiles as well.
Yeah, sure. I feel like text sextiles, it's yeah, I think compared to trine, people kind of romanticize trine. Sextiles, people are probably more aware that yes, there is such opportunities, but you got to put in the effort to get that opportunity. So there is work involved. There is work involved. And I wanted to also add in that despite all these energies, I think during this new moon, one good thing is Mars is in its own domicile rulership of Aries, and Venus is also in her own domicile rulership of Taurus. So there is also the support there, in addition to the sextile. So
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And then we've got Jupiter exalted in Cancer is also
Absolutely.
sextiling Venus.
Mm,
It's about 4 degrees, but still. That's, I
Mm,
think, a really important part of this chart, with Mars at home in Aries, Venus at home in Taurus, and then the sextile between Venus and Jupiter. So, yes, sextiles, as you said, there's got to be a little bit of work to get the opportunity. I also like to look at sextiles as a very creative aspect. And when you combine, the creativity of the sextile with some of these other interplanetary aspects, especially Venus and Jupiter, there is a lot of creative potential available in this chart. So I'm looking at this as a time period where people can kind of throw a lot of stuff in the cauldron, the cauldron of new
yeah.
beginnings, and stir that cauldron and really get out of it as some time goes by, some very interesting, surprising, unique, and very juicy, fertile kind of manifestations here with all this Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Cancer going on. There's a lot of just pure creative potential happening in this chart.
Yeah, 100%. And I also want to add that because in traditional astrology, if you're a day chart, if you're born in a day, your sun is above the hemisphere. Um, Jupiter is your benefic planet. So look at where Jupiter is in your chart for those people born in the day, whereas people who are the night chart, like myself. So look at Venus, where Venus is at, which house it is in your own chart. I think leverage that would be beneficial. Yeah,
Oh, thank you. That's a great tip. And that's a traditional astrology tip. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
great. Love it. Love it. So, and then here we have them in this new moon chart activating each other. So that's a really nice one for everybody, both day and night people, I would assume. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so we have both Connie and I'm an herbalist, and Connie's been studying medical astrology. So we both have some knowledge and background in bringing herbal remedies into our practices. And I am just going to put up, we've got some great plants coming your way for both the northern and the southern hemisphere. So, do you want to go over those southern hemisphere plants?
Yeah, sure. So as you can see in this chart, rosemary is one of the flowers that you could use. That's more on the focus and warmth for the Southern Hemisphere people. Sage as well. I love sage. So that's more for grounding and boundaries. Calendula is more on soothing the fiery edges, which is perfect during this Aries season. And lastly, eucalyptus, which is very, very abundant in Australia. We've always got eucalyptus trees, and that's for breath and clarity. Yeah,
I love those. Those to me, they really fit the meaning both of the core Aries just archetype, but also of how it expresses itself in the season of autumn, which
yeah.
is, just it really is a just it's sort of like a nuance that's very important to make that distinction between how Aries can express at different times in the wheel of the year. And that's your quote right there. Herbs are seasonal allies and they help us work with the temperament. So the temperament that expresses in the season. And another thing I like about those plants for the Southern Hemisphere is they kind of to me kind of bring out that wise Aries part. There's
Oh,
kind of the
yeah,
immature Aries, the young
like
Aries,
that.
and then there's the seasoned Aries. And rosemary, sage, eucalyptus, they all have that kind of wise elder plant
Yeah.
medicine feeling to me. So I think those are really lovely. Okay, so for the northern hemisphere, we have a classic Mars plant, nettles, which is my go-to plant for this Aries season. And one of the great things about nettles is that it's actually one of the prime times to harvest the nettle leaves themselves is during Aries season. So nettles feeds iron in your body, and iron is the metal that's associated with Aries and Mars. So there's a lot of kind of doctrine of signatures elements to nettles that matches it up. And Culpeper assigned nettles to Mars in Aries in particular. Dandelion is a great one. It clears winter heaviness, especially working on the liver, helps to just kind of cleanse the liver and also balance it from any leftover, winter holiday celebrations. That's one of the great benefits of our liver is it helps us to kind of clean and clear things out, and dandelion is such great support for that. And then we've got peppermint, and that's a really nice one too. It reminds me of eucalyptus, but again, it's got that
Yeah,
more
exactly. I was, yeah,
yin. Yeah. Go ahead.
there is that similarity. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely, they're both good for the lungs and breathing and just kind of bringing that uplifting. But eucalyptus has a bit more mature feel to it, and peppermint's like the youthful piece. And then hawthorn flowers, they're good both emotionally for your emotional heart, but also your physical heart, supporting, blood flow and circulation and just kind of opening you up. So those are really lovely plants.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about the similarity of peppermint and eucalyptus, I can just imagine like you guys in the Southern Hemisphere, you can just chew a gum, peppermint gum, and just go and walk around. Whereas for us in the Southern Hemisphere, we use eucalyptus essential oil, and then we just use it on like the diffuser, and then try to ground ourselves and stay inward. Like such a beautiful way of doing it. Yeah.
I love that. So, and we're talking a little bit more about some ways to integrate this transition time where the season is changing, both in the northern and the southern hemisphere. We're standing kind of at the precipice or the doorway of closing the door on the old season and opening it on the new season. So do you want to share some of the themes we could think about during this time?
Yeah, sure. So I think after all we talk about, the temperaments, the season, the dynamics of the planets that's going on at the moment, it's really the takeaway. It's what do you want to begin during this season? So, like I feel like for the Northern Hemisphere people, maybe you can ask yourself questions like, what really excites me right now? Like, what the thought of something, oh, is that exciting? Like, feel it in your body, not so much from your brain, like not using your thoughts, but more like when you think about something new, how do you feel in your body? Do you feel that gush of excitement? I think that would be your cue on what to start. And, like for Southern Hemisphere people, it's really more about like simplifying, like what do you want to simplify to reduce your commitments? That's more inward, what needs clearing, pruning or energizing. So yeah, there is just these two difference that I feel like that could be something that we can ponder
Hmm.
over spot. Hmm.
Yeah, I really love these suggestions because there is this part of Aries that does kind of make things simple. Like you said, it's beginning again. Um, we have a chance to kind of for reinvention, in that part of our lives where we have
Yeah,
Aries in our chart. And when we clear and prune, it does free up energy for new opportunities, new people, new experiences to come in. It's sort of like
absolutely.
a emotional, psychic, maybe even physical kind of clutter clearing. And I'm sensing from you with the southern hemisphere, that this is what happens in autumn. Is there is that kind of inward clearing of clutter, and in the northern hemisphere, there's kind of an external, like, okay, let's make space. And
Yeah,
let's make space for the new to begin. And when we look at Aries, Aries is the it's associated with the ram, It's got those big
Mm.
horns, and they use their heads to kind of move away whatever's stopping them from going forward.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that image is coming to me too of just, make way for the new to begin.
I love that. Yeah. And I feel that you need a lot of courage to clear away stuff and the courage comes from the Aries energy because sometimes you're just so afraid, like the fear, afraid of losing something, afraid of clearing off things, but leverage the Aries energy to be bold and fearless to clear away, to declutter for the Southern Hemisphere people. I think, yeah, like what you said about the horns. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like how you brought in the piece about fear and courage because I think
Mm,
sometimes when people think of Aries, they think they're just born fearless, but I
yeah.
think Aries really, that's part of their life lesson is to learn, about fear and how to keep moving forward even when they feel the fear, and that helps them develop
Yes.
courage.
Amazing. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the last thing on that slide was about having an herbal ally. Do you want to speak to that for the season? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So like to pick one herb or flower that you can resonate with and use that to guide you along the season. I think, yeah, the flowers that we talk about, the plants that we talk about earlier on, I think that will help you really. Mm,
And I think, sometimes people, when I talk to them about using plants and flowers as part of their remedies for different astrological, transits or parts in their chart, they think that they have to take it internally. But
mm.
I often will suggest, there's so many different ways to form a relationship and to create that kind of ally connection with a plant? And what are some of the ways that you've used plants as allies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good idea because, like, say for example, the Southern Hemisphere, we talk about the eucalyptus. So, like, instead of like more like using it. Like even going out to like in Australia, when we drive to like further away inland, usually when we drive through the forest, there are lots of eucalyptus trees. So that's also another way that you can actually, get that energy, the grounding, clarity, the energy from eucalyptus. So not so much of ingesting it as well. But having said that, I think I'm just going to try rosemary, like, the rosemary leaf in my cooking, more of that as spice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And doing it with intention, so I'm
Yes.
I'm putting rosemary in my food and I'm,
Mm.
you know, honoring the plant and honoring the qualities, the medicinal qualities of it, the energetic qualities of it. So yes, so cooking, just being with the plant, you can put it in your bath, you can grow it. So there's many, many ways to kind of invoke the benefits of plant allies that we'll
Yeah.
see. Anything else to add for our Aries spring equinox talk about what the season is like?
No,
We covered.
I think it's exciting. I just feel that it's really exciting. Like I feel like it's a new beginning again, but just to be in alignment with your season and body. Um, yeah, and take it slow. Like take it slow, really.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Saturn and Aries is really going to be teaching us about how to temper our pace. So maybe we'll have another talk about the Saturn, Neptune, and Aries and how
Oh
that's
yeah.
Aries season. But
Sure, sure. Let's do that. Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much, Connie. It was a pleasure as always to
Thank
share
you.
astrology with you, and I'm sure we'll be doing it again.
Yes, we will. Thank you, Fern.